If you've been on the internet for any amount of time, you're familiar with the concept of being canceled and or as it has been named, cancel culture. It is a wide phenomenon seen all across the internet and has become such an active player in anyone who has a following that some people have managed to make it their cancellations a part of their career, such as people like Tana Mojo. This somewhat goes against the intended purpose of cancellation, and at this point it's pretty common knowledge that cancellation widely just doesn't work. After all, for someone to have a career in social media after cancellation is against the very point of canceling someone. So why does cancel culture seem to be something that so many people are scared of, yet have so little power long term, at least from what we see? Why does it not do the intended effect? And is there a way or point to making it be more prevalent and related to incidents I will be discussing? Concept of YouTube or TikTok or even the social media app at the time of popping off, and what it means to be a part of that is beyond the individual aspect, because at the end of the day, someone's personal life is really never our business. But sometimes it does become our business, both against our will and a part of our will, depending on one person's perspective and or the case-by-case basis in which it can be. For example, if someone displays predatory behaviors, we should be the first to call that person out and admit it's strange and gross behavior one has put forward. To give you some perspective, I am a 22-year-old. I cannot imagine dating anyone under the age of 20. It's not to say that someone is a predator for dating younger than them. It's to say that I certainly raise an eyebrow and will question you and my friendship with you if you are chasing people that much younger than you for my own personal reason. That's not to say those who go younger than me are wrong. It is to say I will personally judge you for going that much younger than yourself, and I will most likely not continue to interact with you beyond that point. That is based on my personal perspective and social dynamics, which is much of what cancel culture is based in. This idea of what is right or wrong, this idea of what is passable and who is not. And for some, there are biases, and for some, there are none. Either way, there are people who will always see you as gross or not, and I am among those people. There are age gaps I raise my own eyebrow at, and there are some that I would support, and that does come down to my own personal biases. For example, a 2-year age gap for me is something I would not judge when it comes to someone like a 23-year-old with a 25-year-old. For that and that age gap will get wider and wider as people involved get older and older for my own personal belief and preferences. It is in fact a spectrum, and it is not something someone can always have a definitive answer of. What I can say is there are victims of cancel culture, and those are always the people we should focus on in cancel culture. The victims are those who have been preyed upon, used, those who knew their value and chose to speak out about it, those who had the strength and should be celebrated. Rather, instead, we often focus on the executioners and predators of cancel culture and move away from what it is all meant to be about, victims. We also tend to focus on players who aren't even entirely relevant to the conversation, and due to their involvement in third-party motives and or references, where I remind us all to focus on the problem at hand. The victim is what we should focus on and what we can do to make them feel better, what has happened to them. We see this in a wider magnitude in Hollywood with the more mainstream outlets in aspects such as the Me Too movement, which has now long lost relevancy in the more modern days due to the normalization of these problems and predatory behaviors, leading to the public to take more of these situations less serious, as well as the fact that people were already in the camp of not believing all victims. But this is a reminder to you, the viewer, believe all victims regardless of who is around them and what their previous actions have led us to believe. To be clear, not all victims are going to be truthful and honest, and there will be people who believe all victims to benefit themselves. But that doesn't take away from the sentiment that when it comes to victims, we should err on the side of trusting them to begin with and then regretting it afterwards. Then there's the fact of who cancel culture indirectly affects, the viewers. Viewers and content creators' relationships are quite unique, but not nearly as one would think. The idea of parasocial relationships has existed for a long time in movies and TV, books, music, you name it, in all art platforms and any sort of art forms in media in which we have indulged. There has always been some amount of parasocialness to it. Before TV and movies, we connected to musicians and musicals. Before that, we connected to fictional characters and writers. Before that, we had deities and gods to pray to. Needless to say, there has always been an element of parasocial relationships in culture, and to some degree, there has always been an extent of cancel culture as well. When people fall in and out of popularity as a result of what they have done with their career, you could argue that that is cancel culture. With that being said, the point of cancel culture is accountability, but accountability by whose standards? The viewers, the people who have formed these parasocial bonds with a person they have never met, the ones who created these platforms for these people, those who once worshipped gods and deities now watch Get Readies with Me on their phone and indulge in content. And this gives these people power. Many of these creators are not more than a person they were before the views, likes, comments, and instead are able to now rise above and beyond through creating a followership. With that being said, that gives these creators power, but also gives the viewers power as over the creator as well. Somewhat of a balance, if you will. One can only have power with the other, and the creator without their viewership is nothing more than a viewer, and a viewer without a content creator and content is the same. This means that although empirically viewers have no extra ability or power in their own personal lives, they do have power in a creator's life, and that's where the accountability of cancel culture resides. This aspect of social media is pretty unique, and someone's success in social media often does correlate back to the following and community they have created, which is different from more standard fame we see in Hollywood, often being associated with skills or talent or connections, more likely than not. Social media fame has a double-edged sword to it, where the viewer has more power over the person they are a fan of more than the traditional fame would. This results in cancel culture having the desired effect of one's audience holding them accountable for their actions, both on and off a platform. The problem is this doesn't end up happening. Instead, we see the party often meant to be held accountable, ignoring controversy and moving past, using clever press releases, as well as pushing past the hate and outright blocking it from happening in their page through filtering comments and or censorship on videos and content being released at times, or not releasing any content at all. There is genuinely an exact sciences method at this point, which goes as such. Get called out for something wrong and ignore the original call-out video until it goes viral enough that you can't ignore it anymore and you have to talk about it. Make a video addressing the issue at hand, and then take time off to eventually come back and act like normal, act like nothing ever happened. I mean, look at the historical cancellation moments in internet history and see how this formula has become and how it's pointless to cancel people in the first place if this does nothing. That is only partially true. See, in the nature of the internet, someone with intense vitality and fame is bound to gain followers at a similar rate as losing them. But someone losing a mass amount is still valuable regardless of if it seems as though there is no change. Just because things go back to normal doesn't mean that things are back to normal, and doesn't mean that things haven't had an empirical change on that person's life or in that person's life. There most likely has been, and at the bare minimum, we struck the fear of God into them as they bared witness to the precious numbers on a screen drop. That's the important part to remember. It may appear that there is no effect, but there is. It may be small, but it is something, and it's the least we can do for victims in the situation. The worst we can do for a victim in the situation is forget. Forgetting is negligent, and forgetting is undermining the whole point of cancel culture. So with all that being said, what is the point of cancel culture? Why are we canceling someone? Some would say it's to permanently deplatform someone who is dangerous. To that, I would occasionally agree. Some would say it's to warn others of the harm an individual is capable of. To that, some would agree. But the one thing and the one point that I think cancel culture is personally most important to me is the concept of reforming a person. See, personally, there are very few times where I personally think someone has done something abhorrent enough to justify losing a platform and for the rest of their life and lose a livelihood, for example. Now, I'm not saying it's not possible. There are certainly people who I would say don't deserve a platform anymore. But for me, it's unlikely, and rather what my goal is in the productivity of cancel culture is for those who have wronged others to understand the harm they have caused, determine how that has affected others, work towards bettering the situation, as best you can, and then most importantly, implementing changes in your own life as to not make the same mistakes you have before. How can we prove all of these things to be true? Simple. That requires second chances. Now, to some, there are no second chances, and I think that's fair and reasonable, especially given the nature of the internet. If you never want to see someone again due to their actions, you can block them and never see them again. Well, in most case scenarios. Of course, there are sometimes collabs that change that. For me, there are some cancellations I don't mind that have been put to the side. They have proven to me their content and their actions that they are better people than before, and that their second chance is worth it. This list consists of people such as iDubbbz, Jenna Marbles, and to an extent Trisha Paytas. All three of these creators have a history in controversy, some worse than others, but all three have widely been forgiven by the internet for one reason or another, and honestly, I'm not entirely opposed to it. iDubbbz, for example, is one of the most controversial people on this list due to his incessive use of the N-word and how he would use his platform to further express negativity and hate. He is someone I would have usually not chosen to give a second chance to, but I can understand why no one ever would want to, and that's coming from someone who now has given him a second chance. For me, it has been his working towards better causes and the use of his platform that he uses to this day to make genuine change in ideas and content creation through avenues such as the Creator Clash, which is both a unique content concept as well as a charity that has proven to me that he is worth a second chance. Then there's Jenna Marbles, who is a person that was known to be the internet sweetheart, loved by all, hated by none, till some conflicting evidence came out about her past behavior, and some people's perception of her is changed. I use her as an example, as she is quite often deemed as the perfect apology, and what it means to truly take accountability for your actions, and take the steps to reform them. She admitted her faults and explained why she was wrong for them, and then removed herself from the internet entirely, now living out her life doing who knows what, having sacrificed all of her fame and success and name of amending the hurt that she has caused by her past. And that's a beautiful thing to do, and something that's very difficult and not usually expected of people. Then there's Trisha Paytas, and she falls somewhere in between both of these cases, having not done a lot to proven herself as reformed, nor uses her platform to better make content for herself or her audience, but also not really causing any more harm along the way. Looking at Trisha Paytas' recent history proves that she has made a massive change in her life, at least in her personal life. She has children, a husband, and more importantly, a life to take care of outside of her content creation, which has given her more perspective on the antics she used to pull. No longer is she doing things specifically for attention and clicks, but instead she just creates and has become relatively harmless, a much better presence than you would have previously seen her as. Then you have those who come back and have proven time and time again that they are not to be trusted, and to prove that cancel culture does have a reason to exist. Shane Dawson, Jeffree Star, and James Charles. Frankly, these three have so much controversy together and separate that you could make an entire video series dedicated to the individual dramas, let alone their entire careers on the internet, and put them all together in one massive documentary, which I'm sure someone has done and or is currently working on as this video gets created. It would take fucking years to make. Shane Dawson is someone who is now similar to Trisha Paytas in the camp of nowadays as being harmless. But the difference between Shane Dawson is he's proven almost every step of the way that him having a platform is harmful to others and those around him. You can argue that Trisha has done the exact same, which I would say is a fair argument, but I have a slight more bias towards Trisha Paytas due to her current conduct and how her reputation has aged compared to Shane Dawson. A man who has been seen acting very grossly towards minors on multiple occasions, a man who created a platform for himself as a redemption arc for other canceled YouTubers, a man who has associated some of the most problematic people on the internet consciously, constantly, and has become one of the most disliked figures, dare I say, for a good reason. There's a cornucopia of reasons to dislike Shane Dawson, and there are many valid reasons to not want him to have a platform, but one that I believe to be the most as to why Shane Dawson has come to deserve the many cancellations of his life on the internet is his pattern of behavior. Shane and everyone else I mentioned in this section has a pattern of behavior that, if we forget, always tends to show up again in one way or another. Shane goes back all the way to the beginning of his career, using comedy as a veil for anything that he would do that would be deemed as bad or not. According to Jeffree Star, we have a similar pattern of controversy following in his footsteps of his career every step of the way. Jeffree Star is a man of pointless apologies that are just said to save face than of actually doing anything and or learning anything about what these apologies are for and changing one's actions and ways. Jeffree has built much of his career off of doing something and asking for forgiveness later, and with most of his antics being dedicated to getting a higher amount of clicks and views as to feed his ego. His pattern would be aimless and pointless apologies that, when put into contrast to his actual behavior, have little to no meaning at all. Then finally we have the person who inspired this video to be created, James Charles. This is the part of the video when I get annoyed. James Charles has been and will most likely remain massively successful after this current controversy. A man that has associated with having victims, a man in which is a meme to discuss his interaction with minors, a man who now is known to have housed an abuser and attempt to get with said abuser, is someone who, instead of holding accountable, we have chosen to make a joke about, and that's how he keeps getting away with it. We have seen James Charles has not changed and never will. We have proof that he will remain the same as he has before. The first controversy ever in his career, and it doesn't matter how many people come forward about it. He will make it about himself and how he is always the victim, and we will continue to perpetuate his career through meme culture and meme and jokes instead of taking these very serious allegations seriously. And then there's the drama channels. The journalists, if you will. They may use the excuse of journalism and news to excuse using someone else's trauma for their clicks and views. Now, you could accuse me of doing the exact same thing, yet I spent the entire video not mentioning names until the very end, to make a point of the video more important than the actual names I'm mentioning in it. Once again, your version of right and wrong and ways to go about situations such as this will differ from mine. But what I would never do is host an interview with a third party and try to claim it as getting the truth out there when the victim herself has not responded to the allegations. The victim of the actual violence that was perpetrated against her hasn't spoken on it and was refusing to be interviewed by you. That's what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't go interview someone else for the scoop, because that's morally reprehensible. This is all drama channels, however, as all of you getting a video about the tea up as fast as possible to capitalize on views and hysterics, and then have the audacity to claim it's journalism, which in any journalist worth their salt would explain to you how important integrity and accountability is in that field. You thought I was going to forget you, but to me, you are worse than the actual people who commit the crimes, because you're largely the reason why these people keep getting away with their actions over and over again. You're too focused on getting the gossip out there than focusing on the actual problem at hand, and genuinely, it disgusts me. To center your life around other people's controversies certainly must be miserable. It's the least you deserve, though. Notice how I waited till Kayla made a response before name-dropping James Charles. Notice it and learn from it. A woman was abused. There are many victims to the people I have mentioned in this video, and everyone has become more concerned with the perpetrators of these crimes than the actual people involved in them. All three of the content creators I mentioned before in the bad sections of apology videos all made choices, and I can't tell you whether to forgive them or not. What I will say is I won't forgive them, and more importantly, I won't forget their actions. Not just that I won't forget their actions, nor will I forget the actions of those who I have forgiven. Because that's my job as a consumer of this content, as a fan and as a viewer. I have been Enigma. Don't forget. Goodbye.